What was the other thing we were going to say?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So welcome back to Retired Renovators. This is a YouTube channel that my husband Gary and I created to make a record of the renovations that we're doing on our 100-plus-year-old historic big brick house. We finished the carriage house, we're living there, and now we're working on the big brick house, and we're finally starting to make some progress. And what I'm working on right now is repairing the brick that is exposed inside the house. And so I want to talk about how I mix up mortar and how I actually put the brick in. So I'm getting ready to put in some brick. Mr. Retired Renovator is putting some flooring in, spaces, holes to get ready for new flooring. And want to talk just a minute about mixing up mortar with historic brick. There's different issues with mortar, and I'm going to talk about that in another video about the kinds of mortar and what we decided to use. But for today, just want to talk about how you mix it up. I like to mix it up by hand. Again, I'd mentioned that it's kind of like cooking to me. This is not a precise science. You have to feel how much the mortar you want and don't want, and so it's just the mortar and the water. We mix it up. I like to start with some water and start adding some mortar until it feels pretty good. So I've done that. I stir it by hand. Here I am right now, very soupy. So you can, well, you can't see that. Very soupy. So you know you need more mortar in there. So I'll just keep mixing it up until I get it to a consistency that I think I like. So I've been mixing this for a while and it's getting to be a pretty good consistency. You can see in here it's still a little too wet. So what we're trying to get to is when I put it on the trowel, it will stick a little bit before it falls. So you can see it's very close to that. Oops, let's see, there you go. It's very close to that. That is sticking pretty well, but I want to mix a little bit more and add a little bit more mortar to it. And this is where I say it's a lot like cooking. It's not precise. You just have to figure out what works for you. It kind of looks like chocolate cake to me. Okay, so sprinkling in a little bit more, stirring it up. So you have to have some strength to do this, but if you work in small batches, you don't need a lot. And I recommend working in small batches because if you're like me, number one, you're really slow and you have to carry this stuff around, so it's heavy. And it's just hard to mix up big batches of it, and you have about an hour to work with it. So this is about what I can do in an hour's worth. So still getting the edges. All right. Okay, so see how it's slowly sliding down? That's a good sign. I'm going to put a little more mortar in. A lot of videos I looked at, they make their mortar drier than I do, but I can't get it to work much drier than this, so. Okay, so it's stiffening up, but it's still workable. All right, here's a trowel of it, and see how it's pretty slow. coming off the trowel. So that feels pretty good to me. So I'm going to give it another stir and then let it sit for several minutes. Okay, so I'm climbing up the ladder. There's a number of things I need to do before I start with the mudding. And the first is, when you're dealing with these old historic bricks, the mortar does not want to stick to them at all. So I found that if you first soak them just for a few seconds in water, that helps a whole lot. And then we also need to spray the existing brick. Keep everything moist. That really helps with the moisture. So I'm going to do that before I start, and then I need to do a rough fit to make sure that I think these will work. That one looks pretty good. That one's kind of ugly. Okay, that one's too big. That one's too big. So we're going to go with these two. So I'm going to moisten those, and then I'm going to spray my brick again, and then I'm going to check my mortar, and then we're going to start putting up the mortar. So this would be an excellent time to take a moment and hit the subscribe button. You can watch my antics of doing stuff for the very first time. I am no expert in this mortar business. If you are a professional mason, please don't cringe too much. I'm doing the best I can. So would appreciate your support if you would just hit subscribe, and then you can watch all the other crazy things that I'm trying to do to help out Gary, who actually knows what he's doing. All right, thank you. Let's continue. Okay, so let me show you my sprayer. You can get these at Home Depot, Menards, Lowe's, just a little garden sprayer we use for water. Works fantastically well. You're going to want to moisten this multiple times, really get that brick pretty moist. I don't know what the science is on why mortar sticks better when things are wet. All I know is mortar does not want to stick to old historic brick, so it's an issue no matter what. All right, so I have mixed up my mortar. It's feeling pretty good. Give it another stir, and then I'm going to put a big old glob on the bottom of the first brick I'm working on. And this is where I say it's like cooking. It kind of reminds me of icing a cake, like a nice chocolate ganache is what we're going for. I know that's what you think of when you do brickwork. Okay, so hope you can see that's on there. Went pretty quickly. Now I'm going to take my brick and try and put a nice little icing layer on the top of the brick. Again, nice chocolate ganache. You can see that up close. It's sticking, so that's a good sign. And then stick it in there. This is where you just place it in there and try and get it in a place where it's even. These are hard because it's in the corner, so even on both sides, and you're dealing with all irregular bricks, right? Now I forgot, I need to get my hawk. Give me a second. Right. So here's my hawk, as I talked about yesterday, a little wooden platform that Gary made me. I'm going to spread the mortar on this hawk. This is for the filling in the joints. So get it on here. Again, this kind of reminds me of baking for some reason. And first of all, it's very messy, so if you do not like mess, this is not a job for you. So if you're very particular about messes, you can forget about it. All right, so here, see how I have a nice long line? That's what I'm going to use with my things, whatever they're called. I forget what they're called. I will try to look that up. All right, here we go. Okay, I've got the brick in here. Now, I'm going to line up the brick and the hawk, and I'm going to push some mortar with the back side of this tool. So just push and get all that mortar in there. Push and shove. I first learned this technique from C. Jane Drill. I think she's the only construction female on YouTube that I've come across. Push, that went in pretty well. The vertical sides are really hard to do in part because it's hard to get the mortar not to fall out. So you have to kind of work quickly to get it in there. Not doing too well there. Get some side going on in there. See, it just kind of falls and it's just gross. I'm going to switch to my smaller one to make more room, get it in there. Seems to want to go in there pretty well. Let's get a little more. Look for holes. This is really hard when you're repairing brick because you're starting with imperfect stuff and adding imperfect stuff and sticking with imperfect stuff. So you can see it's messy, but we're going to fix all that quickly. So